Our devotional for March 20, and this is again a reflection on the devotional From My Utmost for His Highest by Oswald Chambers. You can find a link to the devotional at utmost.org. The text for today is from Genesis 18, verse 17. I will read that in context, starting at verse 16 and ending at verse 19. When the men got up to leave, they looked down towards Sodom, and Abraham walked along with them to see them on their way. Verse 17. Then the Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him. For I have chosen him so that he will direct his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised him." In our devotional. Friendship with God. Shall I hide from Abraham what I am doing? The delights of his friendship. Genesis 18 brings out the delight of true friendship with God, as compared with simply feeling his presence occasionally in prayer. This friendship means being so intimately in touch with God that you never even need to ask him to show you his will. It is evidence of a level of intimacy which confirms that you are nearing the final stage of your discipline in the life of faith. When you have a right standing relationship with God, you have a life of freedom, liberty, and delight. You are God's will. And all of your common sense decisions are actually his will for you, unless you sense a feeling of restraint brought on by a check in your spirit. You are free to make decisions in the light of a perfect and delightful friendship with God, knowing that if your decisions are wrong, he will lovingly produce that sense of restraint. Once he does, you must stop immediately. The difficulties of his friendship. Why did Abraham stop praying when he did? He stopped because he was still lacking the level of intimacy in his relationship with God, which would enable him boldly to continue on with the Lord in prayer until his desire was granted. Whenever we stop short of our true desire in prayer and say, "Well, I don't know, maybe this is not God's will," then we still have another level to grow. It shows that we are not as intimately acquainted with God as Jesus was, and as Jesus would have us to be, that they may be one, just as we are one, from John 17:22. Think of the last thing you prayed about. Were you devoted to your desire or to God? Was your determination to get some gift of the Spirit for yourself or to get to God? For your Father knows the things you have need of before you ask him, Matthew 6, verse 8. The reason for asking is so you may get to know God better. Delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. Psalm 37, verse 4. We should keep praying to get a perfect understanding of God himself. Now, this concept here, which we speak of often, friendship with God and the friendship of God, we often do think of that in only the good moments, right? Where we feel a special connection. But what Chambers is talking about here is that we should be able to reach a level of intimacy with God so that we would know what God would have us to do. Even as we go further in our prayer life and in our walk with God, we're going to know the direction. And I'll be honest, I've had times like that where I truly felt I knew the Spirit's direction for me. When I was obeying the promptings of the Holy Spirit, I could see the fruit, I could see the outcome, and it was good. And it's not always like that. The things that I had in common during those times of feeling intimacy with God, they were actually some of my most unsettled times. They were some of the times where I felt like my plans were gone, they were dashed, and I didn't know what to make of them. I didn't know where my next source of income was going to be coming from. In short, it felt a lot like right now, where I just didn't know what was next. And when I was relying upon God, I felt a closer intimacy. And it was intimacy because I had to be. I had to be dependent on him. And as I think on it, that probably reflects that I haven't been very dependent on him in the way that I should. So my encouragement for you today is to think of the ways that you can walk closer with God in your prayer life so that you are hearing his will and you are his will, as Oswald Chambers says. Thank you.